Coming up on today's show, according to Matt Maiocco of NBC Sports Bay Area, the 49ers could be open to trading Deebo Samuel. And at the end of the day, this is why you subscribe to the channel, because we're bringing you the latest 49ers news and rumors, free agency updates, NFL draft coverage, live shows that include mailbags. So make sure you subscribe to the channel for free daily videos by hitting that red sub button down below or plug in that link, youtube.com/49erstv. All right, let's get it. You're watching the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Senior. Coming up on today's show, we're unpacking the latest around Deebo Samuel as the Deebo Samuel watch continues. He wants a new contract. The 49ers haven't given it to him, and because of that, there are a lot of trade rumors hovering around Deebo Samuel. I think it's somewhat unrealistic that the 49ers end up dealing him, but as evidenced by this NFL offseason, anything at the end of the day can certainly happen. So you take a look at the Deebo Samuel timeline, right? In 2021, he had a historic season. Most rushing touchdowns in the history of the league for a wide receiver. He impacted the game in a variety of ways. In January, after the 49ers NFC Championship game loss against the Los Angeles Rams, John Lynch had said Deebo Samuel is budgeted for going into the final year of his rookie contract. Then again in March, he said once again, we want Deebo Samuel around for a long time. He didn't get that contract extension, though, in an offseason in which wide receivers have gotten paid, like Tyreek Hill, leading the charge, average annual value of $30 million after he was dealt to the Miami Dolphins. And in April, back last week, Deebo Samuel, he really sent 49ers fans into a frenzy by wiping his Instagram of everything Niners. Then there was that Instagram post from his friend, who's a Miami-based entrepreneur, with the caption that said, "If it ain't $25 million a year, we don't want it." Now, it's easy to see why Deebo Samuel wants to get paid. The wide receiver market, as I just talked about, is exploding this offseason. Really the most that we've seen wide receivers get paid over the course of NFL history, and Deebo Samuel's coming off a year in which he played running back, he played wide receiver, he even returned kicks, his body went through a beating, and this upcoming year he has a base salary of $3.9 million, and that right there is kind of disrespectful for Deebo Samuel in his eyes because he thinks of himself as one of the most impactful players in the National Football League. So as we continue to break all of this down, we also have that Matt Maiocco report coming up here in just a few moments. What should the 49ers do? Should they sign Deebo Samuel? Should they trade him? Because imagine this, if a team came up to the Niners and they're like, you know what? You don't have first-round picks until 2024. We'll give you a couple first-rounders, maybe even an impact player, and then you don't have to pay Deebo Samuel. You can draft wide receivers and still build out your roster. Imagine that being a scenario. So get those votes in, type S for sign or type T for trade. Deebo Samuel, the player. Last year, he was marvelous, and what he did, it was straight up magical, folks. 77 catches, 1,400 yards, average yards per catch of north of 18, and 6 touchdowns. And it's funny how the Deebo Samuel detractors want to say he's not a prototypical wide receiver. That can be true. Maybe he's not a Davante Adams, but does Davante Adams impact the game in a variety of ways like Deebo Samuel? The answer to that question is no, because of what Deebo Samuel was able to do on the ground game. 56 totes, 365 yards, 8 more touchdowns on the ground, so that gave him 14 total touchdowns, and every time he got his hands on the rock, a big play was waiting to happen. In the playoffs, he also proved his worth against the Green Bay Packers, against the Dallas Cowboys, and that 45-yard catch and run against the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC Championship game. Receiving yards, $154. Receiving touchdowns, 1. Rushing touchdowns, 137, and 1 rushing touchdown as well. So in the playoffs, I thought he emerged and continued to prove that he's one of the premier players in the NFL. And because of the wide receiver market exploding, Deebo Samuel's looking at this list, and he's saying, you know what? Does Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, do these guys impact the game, and are they as valuable to their respective teams as me? And Deebo Samuel could probably make the argument that no, those players aren't as impactful and not as special as Deebo, who has proven this past year that he's a unicorn. But from the 49ers standpoint, if you're paying a player $25 to $30 million, you want to make sure that that player is going to be available and playing week in and week out. NFL stands for not for long for a reason. The physicality of the game causes players' careers to really get diminished very quickly. And could that happen with Deebo given his playing style? So from the Niners side, they're looking at an impact player who's a homegrown talent. They picked him in the second round. He also has leadership qualities to him, which is really important. We saw that void after DeForest Buckner was traded away. He hasn't played a full season yet, though. So if you're paying him elite money and the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, you want him to be available within your offense. How will Deebo Samuel age given his physical style? $30 million per year is a lot of money for a non-quarterback, and the Niners might look at Deebo and say, look, he's worthy of $25 to $30 million, but at the same time, we can find a stud rookie in the first or second round, especially if we trade him away, who can do a lot of the same things as Deebo. Now, Deebo is one of one. There's no question about that. So trading him away and expecting a rookie to fulfill that production, that's lofty, and you're certainly taking a risk. But in the NFL, we see risks taken often, especially when it comes down to financials. Next up on the show, we will get to that Matt Maiocco report about the Niners maybe being willing to trade away Deebo Samuel. But first, another question for the faithful, and I value your responses in the comment section down below. You saw the top 5 highest paid wide receivers, and Stefon Diggs is 6 on that list. Where do you think Deebo ranks among wide receivers? So don't factor in the whole wide back conversation. He's a wide receiver who can also play running back. Where do you think he slots among the top receivers in the game? Let me know in the comment section. Now, you can watch the 49ers Report on YouTube. You can also watch the 49ers Report on Rumble. And a really cool feature on the Rumble app, you can play our videos, getting you up to date with the latest 49ers news and rumors with the app closed out, but listen to it podcast style. You have to pay for that feature on YouTube. Also, another incentive as to why you should go to rumble.com/49erstv. Sometimes we put content on Rumble only, and we go live on Rumble only, and only those videos are available on the Rumble side of things. So make sure you subscribe, get us past 300 followers by going to rumble.com/49erstv for more exclusive 49ers news and rumors content. It's that link at the bottom of your screen, which is also available in the comment section and the description of this video. As for that much-anticipated report from Matt Maiocco of NBC Sports Bay Area, this is what he had to say, and I'll give my thoughts on what he had to say. He's also, keep in mind, very, very close with the Niners, like very close. He's in the ear of John Lynch, or maybe John Lynch is in the ear of Matt Maiocco, so maybe take it with a grain of salt. But he said this today in his most recent report. There has been no indication the 49ers are openly shopping Deebo Samuel in a trade, but Coach Kyle Shanahan said it himself a year ago. Nobody on the team is off limits for trade discussions. He and Lynch would consider any legitimate offer. So that latter part of the report, very, very notable. Now, according to additional reporting out there on the internet, teams have been calling the Niners about Deebo Samuel, and I don't really make a big deal of that. Like we talked about that Jets report that they were interested in DK Metcalf as well as Deebo Samuel. You watch Deebo and what he brings to the table, what he did in 2021. His highlight reel was straight up stupid. Who wouldn't be interested in a player of that caliber? So, of course, teams are going to do their due diligence and call the Niners about the availability of Deebo. It's up to the Niners if they actually want to engage in those conversations and maybe trade him away. More from Maiocco. It is difficult to justify Samuel's next deal reaching the ranges of Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Stefon Diggs. After all, those players have been among the league's most explosive and consistent wide receivers over the past half dozen seasons. Logically, Samuel's next contract should amount to somewhere between $20 million to $22 million annually, There, that's the easy part. Now, what's funny is that Maiocco is saying that Deebo Samuel isn't worthy of a Stefon Diggs type of contract. Stefon Diggs is making $20 million per year. So I think Deebo Samuel is worthy of that. And the problem with what he said there is that might be Deebo Samuel's demand. And if he takes that demand to the negotiating table and the Niners aren't willing to meet that asking price of about $25 million, Deebo Samuel could hold out. Deebo Samuel could no longer want to play for the Niners, and he could, at the end of the day, demand a trade. And I actually think Deebo is worthy of about $25 million. Now, if you exceed that price, that certainly is a lot of money to pay a non-quarterback, as we've continued to talk about here on the channel. But $20 to $25 million, that should be the asking price for Deebo Samuel and his agent when they go to the negotiating table with the Niners. And if the Niners don't meet that, we're looking at a tricky and scary situation in which Samuel might no longer wear the scarlet, red, and gold. There's also this. Chris Godwin of the Buccaneers, average annual value for him in that deal that he signed in NFL free agency back a couple weeks ago, 3 years and $60 million. That's $20 million per year. I think it would be a steal to pay Deebo Samuel that, but I think he wants more years, and I think he wants more dollars. Now, I also thought what Dan Orlovsky tweeted out this morning was pretty fascinating because it might indicate a change in team philosophy in which positions they prioritize. So the average salary cap of the top 10 players by position is broken down here, and Orlovsky said the league's general managers now think wide receiver is the second most important position on the field. Feel free to disagree with him, but here is the breakdown right now, up to date with where we are in the NFL offseason. Remember, average salary of the top 10 players by each position. Average quarterbacks in the top 10 getting paid $40 million per year. Wide receivers, $23 million. That dollar figure obviously important for Deebo Samuel. What's also notable is that wide receivers now being paid more than edge rushers by $1 million. That's where Nick Bosa comes into the conversation. Offensive linemen, south of 20 mil. Defensive tackles, 18. Cornerback, 17 plus. Safeties at 14.5. That's high end. Tight ends, 12.5. Running backs, 12 plus. And linebackers, 12. And already, Trent Williams, the highest paid left tackle in the game. George Kittle, the highest paid tight end in the game. And Fred Warner is the second highest paid linebacker in the game. So now the Niners might have to have money budgeted for Deebo Samuel, getting paid as a top 5 wide receiver. He might be wanting the highest paid wide receiver money. And then Nick Bosa could be the highest paid player on the team or one of the highest paid edge rushers. That's why this conversation continues, and that's why there's no easy solution. We're talking about a lot of money in which the Niners right now don't currently have, but they have said that they have budgeted for paying Deebo and Nick Bosa, and that's why I'm telling Deebo Samuel, be patient, my guy. You're going to get paid at some point. I understand your frustrations, especially seeing how the wide receiver market is exploding. Your time will come, and hopefully the 49ers agree to your contract demands as long as they're reasonable. Because also, a lot of sponsorship money out there as well where you can secure the bag. So who gets paid more between Deebo and Bosa following that breakdown of what Orlovsky said? One more time, get those votes in. DS for Deebo, NB for Nick Bosa. Appreciate all of you for watching today's show. We'll still be going live tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific.